Fred Benken, nmpistoltraining.com. I'd like to introduce to you an interesting segment on the use of a training journal. A training journal is a really important aspect of your ability to stay safe. There are three things that it'll do for you. The first one is that it'll help you track your improvement when you're training. And another thing is it keeps a historical record of what you're doing. And then third is that if you go to court, it can protect you from a liability perspective. So enjoy this segment on the training journal. It's a mandatory thing is to have a journal. And this is actually a really good tool for your life as well. When I was younger, periodically I would write personal stuff in a journal. And you actually change. At least I did anyways, over time. You can't help it. It's going to happen. It's kind of frightening too, like when you see how you change over life and it's like, you're going, right? Well, to narrow this down some is that to keep your training and your preparations, your safety in what we call a continuous and relevant path, is that in our society, in order to keep it safe, we expect people to be responsible. Right? So, we need to become better, and I need to become better at it too. And one of the ways I do that is I use a journal to keep track of the things that I'm doing. Now, like if you have a blank journal, then you got a problem. Like if you take this course right here, we know from scientific studies that a person, if they want to have a reasonable level of ability to respond to different situations, is you got to have a frequency of exposure to the particular problem. And so like the stuff like the fear and the things that you're worried about, you just get rid of it over time because you expose yourself and you adapt yourself over time and you get used to it. And that's all you do. And if you realize that, and that's the problem, right? A lot of people don't realize it. But all you have to do is to apply yourself to this stuff and you'll get pretty good at it. So in your journal, you should be writing down like things like, if you did an assessment of your house, okay, if you had a meeting with your family to talk about emergencies and what your response is going to be, is to actually come up with a written plan. Now, you may not want to share that with anybody other than just the people that are involved, right? But come up with an agreement and say, okay, like if I break down midway between here and Gallup, right, is that there's always a couple things that we're going to do. Not a huge amount of things, but we all agree, right, that if you're out of communication or whatever, that this is what we're going to do, and you have a plan, right? And this really increases your safety to the maximum level because you want to have a team environment, teamwork. That's what we need. It's the same thing in the workplace. It's the same thing, is that you want to have all the employees in an organization working together, right? And what we do is we go through this process of doing these things, and we keep a record of it so that we keep on track and say, okay, well, how often do we have to do this? Well, for most places, maybe like once a year, you might go through like a review, depending on the danger. If you're dealing with like a pretty dangerous thing like security work or whatever, then you're probably going to have to more frequent assessments. When you go to your places where you're picking up money, you assess that location by itself. You concentrate and you really look and say, okay, well, if somebody's going to rob me, right, this is probably how they would do it. Right, and so I'm going to avoid this particular point so that never happens, right? And then maybe, I might have another person with me to protect me because if it was dangerous, it would be a good idea to have somebody else to help him, right? So this is the stuff that you work out in advance, and you put it in your journal. When you do your practice, like with your gun, you know that you got to practice about once a week to be able to maintain your skills. And this is actually from a scientific study that was done in the military, is that people were getting killed because they weren't training enough. And so, how much is enough? Well, to maintain your skills at a basic level, it's about once a week. Now, there's other things you can do, like being in good shape helps out tremendously, right? So, like now this is where the healthcare thing comes in. Okay, well, if you want to be able to handle a gun really good, or a baton, or anything else, be able to protect yourself well, be able to move good, right, and get out of the way, you got to be in pretty good shape. So the thing is that, all right, well now, maybe I need to start taking care of myself and watch my weight, watch what I eat, and keep in good condition. You say, well, you know, is this like too much? But in reality, it's not. But the gun, if you want to be good at the gun, you're going to have to practice once a week. You're going to have to be in shape, right? You're going to have to be alert. You're going to have good senses. You're going to have good judgment. And your physical being is connected to all of that, right? And so you have to be. So the gun is going to, you know, if you're going to carry it and you're going to have it, it's a good thing because it forces you to live the right way. It's a tool. It's connected to how we are as human beings. You know, human beings are tool users, right? And so when we get good at the tool, right, then we get good too just by ourselves, right? So you document this stuff, right? And it's a way to manage yourself, right? And it takes the discipline. I mean, what's more valuable in your life than your experience, right? So the journal actually helps you analyze this stuff. And then, you know, it's also, you know, by having that frequency, that continuous and relevant preparations that you're doing in your life, you know, it'll make a big difference, or as much of a difference. You're doing everything you can do, right? As you're keeping track of what you're doing, right? If you run a business, I talk to a lot of like police chiefs and stuff like that, and they got to keep a diary because there are people all over them all the time. They're getting sued, you know, they're having employment, you know, issues and stuff like that. And if they don't keep accurate records, right, people will just, you know, bowl them over or just run them over, right, because you don't have any evidence, right? So this is the other thing about keeping a diary. It's not likely to occur because if you do all the other stuff, you know, you're probably not likely to run into a problem where you have to shoot somebody, or maybe you even get in an altercation because you'll be skilled enough to just avoid the whole thing in the first place, right? But if you wind up going to court and you have to justify why you shot somebody, right? And people will question, were you competent at the time? And then you go, well, look at my diary. I train more than anybody in the government, right? I train on a regular basis. I try to do something every day, actually. You know, this counts too. This is training for me too when I teach, right? But I record it all. I keep track of it, right? Now, how well did I do when I trained you? I'll look at your evaluations, and maybe there's some things I forgot, you know, or maybe things I did good on. Okay, it doesn't make any difference, right? The thing is, I'm here and we're doing it, right? So we keep track of that stuff. And then if someday if something happens, right, if somebody blames you, well, you didn't do this right or that, but you say, no, you know, I did everything I could, you know, to try to be a good person and have good preparations. And in the end result, the idea is to have the highest respect for human